Welcome into our Cubs Recap Podcast here on our Recap YouTube channel and available audio only anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. With my guy, Gordon Wittenmeyer, I'm David Kaplan. Let's get right into it because the team that I root for is rolling along, baby. Gordon, the Cubs look good. Their defense has been outstanding. 2 of 3 from the Brewers, and they look like they've got a great shot to be playing postseason baseball.
They've got a great shot at making a wild card, Cap. I still think catching the Brewers is something that's just not in the cards for them. And I don't think I'll be shaving my goatee anytime soon on that bet.
Oh, man, so great.
We'll see. I don't think that's happening. But they are playing well, and I'll say it again, man. We just had this waiver claim period where some teams looking to dump salary, in particular the Los Angeles Angels, put a bunch of guys on waivers, right? You can't make waiver trades anymore in August, but if you just want to dump a guy, you can put him on waivers. So they did. Problem for the Cubs is they've been playing so well lately, if you want to call that a problem, that they're behind their other wild card contenders in pecking order for getting granted a waiver claim. So they had no chance to pick up any of those pitchers. And in fact, the Guardians came in with a record 6 games under 500, but they're in such a crap division. They think with that pitching, they can make a run at the Twins. So they went and picked off all 3 of the big pitchers that the Angels had out there, including Lucas Giolito. And who knows what's going to happen, but the Cubs certainly could have used some pitching help. And because they don't have that, it's going to be kind of like it's been, Cap. When if you play this according to scratch, the way the club is playing and they stay healthy, it could be you win series all the way down the stretch, but it's not sweeping anything. So, it's incremental gains as you go, and that's not going to win the division. But it will get you a playoff spot.
It will get you a playoff spot. Justin Steele has been nothing short of outstanding. He might win the Cy Young. He might not win the Cy Young. I think it's pretty much Blake Snell, Justin Steele.
Zach Gallen. Keep an eye on Zach Gallen.
Yeah. So one of those 3 will be the winner of the Cy Young. We'll see how the last month goes. But, boy, when you shut down Milwaukee the way he did the other night against Corbin Burns and win 1-0, that's a pretty good feather in your cap. He's 15-3 with an ERA of 2.69. So we'll see where that goes. Explain to me why no one picked up Mike Clevinger, because he's throwing the heck out of the ball. His last start, I think he had 10 strikeouts.
Well, doesn't he have another year left on that contract? Or
he has a mutual option for $12 million.
So, which is guaranteed money. Like he can pick it up.
But if
he can pick up a portion of it.
He can guarantee himself a $4 million buyout.
Yeah.
If the Sox don't want to bring him back.
So obviously that's in play there. We know that you take the team I cover, for instance, the Reds, who, by the way, play your Chicago Cubs 4 times in the next 3 days, starting Friday, in what could be a really important series for playoff implications, playoff tiebreakers, wild card position, the whole thing. But you take the Reds, who desperately have needed pitching all season long. And once they started getting good, that was the focus at the trade deadline, starting pitching in particular. A lot of what they tried to do at the trade deadline, when there's no restrictions on who you can trade, was they were looking for controllable players. They didn't get them. At this point with the waiver claims that we talked about, you can't make waiver trades anymore, but you can dump guys. All of a sudden, there were half dozen to a dozen guys that were out there, Clevinger being one of them, a whole bunch of pitchers from the Angels being other guys. But at this point, it only costs you what's left on their contract. And, you're just getting guys for another month. So the Reds wind up picking up a couple outfielders. One of them had a pretty big contract. They're on the hook for about $2 million of it. And the other guy less than $1 million. But Clevinger would have been a guy that would have been a much bigger investment than you want to take on. And he's got some baggage. Let's be honest. We all know what that is. So they've got a pretty good clubhouse there in their case. clubhouse disruptions are a consideration. Anything that could be a distraction.
So he was cleared by MLB of the really awful allegations made by his ex-girlfriend. And MLB said he's cleared. There was no suspensions, no nothing. So if you're trying to win the World Series, whether you're the Cubs or the Reds or any other team, and this guy is the best in terms of quality starter available at this late date, he's throwing the ball way better than Lucas Giolito. He's owed 1.2, I believe, plus the $4 million buyout, or you could pick him up and have him next year. Why would nobody do that?
There's got to be a fear about who the guy is as much as anything. And keep in mind, there's only a handful of teams out there that had the need for the player he is and would have been in the pecking order to get him. The Reds are one of those. And honestly, I had more than one guy in the clubhouse tell me it doesn't matter who they brought in. They felt they had a strong enough clubhouse chemistry and vibe that they could handle anybody coming in. And I even brought up Clevenger to one guy and he said, yeah, bring him in. That's fine. We could use him. So if this did in the Reds case, if this just came down to the money, that to me, is a failure. It's malpractice by the front office because it's not that much money. And you could even, if you didn't like what you got out of him for the final month this year, that $4 million, you could just eat it and get rid of him.
Okay, let me ask you a question. There is a school of thought, and I called a couple of former GMs, not named Steele.
Let me just throw this in though, Cap. I think they believed they were going to get at least one, if not two, of those Angels pitchers. I think the Reds were. I think they thought they were going to get that. So I think that's part of it. I mean, when you claim somebody, if you're one of those teams that gets granted the claims, you have to take the guy. So if you put in claims on, say, the 3 Angels pitchers and the 2 outfielders they did get, that's 5 guys you got to find roster spots for. If those are the guys you want and you think you're going to get most of them, you're going to put in a claim for Clevenger too. Where are you going to put him if you get the other guys? I mean, you have to. This is the calculus of all of that too. Now that's just the Reds.
So I was talking to a couple of former GMs, and I asked them how they would handle this because the Cubs are right there at the luxury tax threshold of 233. They're at 232 and change. Would they be leery with this team of going into the tax because you believe, and like Dansby Swanson said, you can't predict when you're going to start winning. When you think you're going to win, you might have injury. When you don't think you're good enough, you may surprise yourself. So you have to try to win every day. But we've seen the Dodgers, we've seen the Yankees, the Cubs, like big market teams go back under the tax for a year to reset their penalty structure. So if you were running the Cubs and, hey, man, I can get whoever it is, Lucas Giolito to Mike Clevinger to Carlos Carrasco, whoever it was, if that was going to put you into the tax and you didn't truly believe that helps you win the World Series, do you not do it because you don't want to have to reset when you think your window is going to be open?
I think the Cubs answered this when they didn't sell at the trade deadline. They think they can win. Now,
do you think they can win the World Series, or they can be competitive, get to the playoffs, establish a winning culture, all the stuff that I was screaming about?
Look, man, you're the one that brought up Justin Steele when we started this thing. If Justin Steele keeps pitching the way he is right now, he can compete. He can allow you to compete with anybody on a given day in October. And at the time, you didn't know where you were with Marcus Stroman. Marcus Stroman had been an all-star pitcher this year. He was down, but you thought he was coming back. That's a pretty good 1-2. Tyone was starting to pitch a little better. Smiley had his moments. So you had a reason to think that you could win in October, maybe even get stronger in October because, your pitching staff gets a little more condensed. So I think we saw the answer to that. We also know that last year, the last team to make it into the playoffs, the Philadelphia Phillies, who lost a ton of games down the stretch and barely made it by a game, wound up in the World Series. They wound up with a 2-1 lead in the World Series over the Astros before they finally lost that thing. So I think if you think you have a chance to get in and you think you have one or two pitchers at the front of your rotation who can give you a chance to win and you catch the ball like the Cubs do, you'd be an idiot to think that you can't win in October with a group like that, especially a group that includes some veterans who have been in the World Series before and actually won it. So if they think they're good enough to get in the playoffs, of course they think they're good enough to win the World Series.
So I don't think they're good enough to win the World Series.
I don't either. You asked me what they thought. So I think they answered that question. Now, that said, we also know that the optics would have been horrible if they'd have sold again this year. But I go back to what I said. They catch the ball. Dansby Swanson, Cody Bellinger, they've been big players for you this year. They've won World Series before, and there's three guys in all of baseball pitching as well as Justin Steele.
So as you look at the way the division now is going to shake out, and there's not another waiver period coming, correct?
No, this is it. And besides, the only reason this waiver period came up when it did is because today, well, as we record this, the 31st of August is the deadline for getting somebody in your organization in time to make them eligible for the postseason. That's why 2 days earlier you saw the waiver, the guys go on waivers, because that process takes that amount of time to play out.
Okay, so now that we know what we've got, and could the Cubs go to their system? They're bringing up Shane Green. They're bringing up Alexander Canario.
Former All-Star Shane Green.
Former All-Star, right. Yeah. He's been pitching at AAA. So that's pretty much going to be your two additions. Okay, Here we go. They're not bringing Cade Horton up. They're not bringing Pete Crow Armstrong up. I
believe they can toggle some of these guys if they want down the stretch.
They can, but right now it does not look like that's the direction they're going. That doesn't look that way. So the Cubs are 3 back in the division. They have a comfortable margin in the wild card, but they could easily be run down with a bad weekend in Cincinnati. So where are you now on the National League? Who's the best team in the National League after the Braves and Dodgers?
After the Braves and the Dodgers? Well, the Brewers. I mean, the Brewers are legit, man.
You like them better than the Phillies?
Oh, man. That's close. I'll say that's close, but I do. They just picked up Josh Donaldson too, for what it's worth. And they made additions at the deadline that re-energized their clubhouse. They've got frontline pitching. Woodruff's back.
Yeah, I like the Mark Canha pickup.
I do too. Yeah, and so I think they're in as good a position as anybody. They've got the division where in a schedule down the stretch where they should be able to put themselves in. They're not going to get a bye, but they should be in pretty good shape. They're going to get what, the number 3 wild card, which is going to be Arizona, the Reds, the Giants, could be the Cubs in the first round. I do like the Phillies a lot. They're playing finally the way that I expected them to play all year. I thought they had kind of a dark horse for that division. But the first wild card is a pretty good consolation prize. Those are your 4 teams for sure. And dude, it is a free-for-all after that. The Diamondbacks have 2 starting pitchers worth a damn. The Reds right now have 2 starting pitchers that have been going worth a damn, maybe a third. The Cubs have 2 or 3, depending on Assad, depending on Tyone on a given day, things like that. And so none of these teams, I think, are in position where they're going to go on a winning streak, except I will say this. The Reds just improved themselves. They're the only team since the trade deadline, other than what the Brewers did with Josh Donaldson in the National League, that significantly improved themselves with the moves they made. picking up Hunter Renfroe, who's got 19 home runs, which would lead the Reds if he'd have hit them all with the Reds this year. And Harrison Bader, who's a Gold Glove outfielder, so he's a good run prevention guy, and he rakes against left-handers. So they've just improved their defense. They've just improved a lineup that's been hurt by injuries, and they've got some guys coming back from injuries. And once they're done playing the Cubs and the Mariners right behind them, they've got 20 games left, and 17 of them are against losers, with the only 3 games in there against a team with a winning record is the frickin' Twins. So the Reds have a cake schedule down the stretch, the last 20 games. So if they can get any of their injured guys back and get any pitching at all, watch out for them just taking advantage of the cupcakes.
So I'm looking at the Cubs schedule, and the Cubs have a pretty, they have a handful of series that are going to be very difficult, no question about it. But they have some games in there that are very, very winnable. So they have 4 in Cincinnati this weekend, 3 at home with San Francisco, 4 at home with Arizona. None of those are easy.
That's a tough homestand. I just saw both those teams up close, and Arizona's playing really, really well right now. I don't know how the hell they're getting as much pitching as they are.
Okay, but then the Cubs go to Colorado, go to Arizona, come home for 3 at home with Pittsburgh after a day off, and 3 at home with Colorado. And then
look at that last week, Cap.
They finished 3 in Atlanta, 3 in Milwaukee
on the road. That is a gauntlet. You know who the Reds have? They finish on the road too, against Cleveland and St. Louis. It's a little bit different.
St. Louis not very good, but Cleveland, who knows?
Who knows with these pitchers they just added? They're either going to be in the thick of it and energized, or they're going to be.
I could tell you, general managers in the game, Gordon, are furious at what went on today. Furious.
Oh, just the system?
Yes.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. It is an effed up system.
I had a general manager say, look, he said, we were told no more waiver claim deals, none of it. And all of a sudden a team decides we want to get out all the money, so we're going to waive these guys. And he said, you basically short-circuited the trade deadline and screwed everybody else.
Well, you know what, Cap? Baseball brought this on itself. This isn't the teams screwing it up. This is Major League Baseball, because this is the waiver, the luxury tax threshold that the Angels were up against. They wanted to get down underneath that once they were out of contention. They were trying to play for Shohei, right? They went all in for Shohei at the deadline. It didn't work. They began to plummet. Once they were out of it, which happened very quickly after the trade deadline, now they looked at the luxury tax threshold that they were willing to go over because they were trying to woo Shohei, and said, now we got to get under it. Those luxury tax thresholds only exist because Major League Baseball tried to install salary caps. They've even got harder spending limits on the amateurs. We've talked about this forever. It's part of why tanking exists in the game to the degree it does now. This is all the bed that Major League Baseball made for itself. So when they decided to go to one trade deadline and no more waiver claims in August, because of all these other things that were already in play, this became an unintended consequence. It's on them, screw them. I do think that what's going to happen is you're going to see them get together at the winter meetings and see if there's a way to address this going forward. And I don't know what that is exactly.
Why would the Angels not waive Shohei Ohtani? They're not going to re-sign him.
Maybe because they think they want to re-sign him. But, what's he owed this year?
Got to be. I think he's making $25 million. So I think it had to be a significant amount of money. I don't know if anyone would have claimed him, but I think somebody might have.
I mean, I think that's part of it. But also culturally, if they want any chance at all of re-signing him and maintaining a relationship with him, culturally, something like this matters more. I'm told in Japanese culture, respect than than if this was an American player. So, you disrespect him by waiving him and just like cutting him loose. You've probably lost your relationship with him too. But he's also a one-way player anymore. He's not the Ohtani that we were all raving about as a $600 million player a little while back. Yeah, he's making $30 million this year. So that's a $5 million. That's a $5 million hit for 1 month of a hitter. So
pretty good hitter to stick in your lineup. Can you imagine the Cubs putting him in there? Holy cow.
I mean, if I were the Cubs, I'd do it if he was out there. But I just no. There's a lot of reasons why that wouldn't make any sense if you're the Angels.
So before I let you go and we wrap this bad boy up, what do you expect out of the Cubs and the Reds series? Because Cubs have to be very careful with Justin Steele now, and they have a bit of a cushion. I think they're 3 up on the Reds.
Yeah, he's not pitching in the series.
Correct. They have to be very careful. He soared past his career high in innings. He was great the other night, but he threw 111 pitches. That's a lot in high leverage 1-0 ball game. So what do you expect out of this Cubs-Reds series? I know Jordan Wicks is going to go, and we'll see.
Yeah, well, the Reds have been vulnerable to left-handed pitchers. I don't know what either team's. Well, I think you're going to see a rookie in Game 2 Friday, Lyon Richardson, who we've seen hot and cold in his 2 starts. I don't know who the Cubs are throwing, but the Reds have been vulnerable to left-handers. But they just picked up 2 guys that can hit left-handers, and Bader will probably be in the lineup for that opener against Wicks tomorrow. I don't know if Renfroe is going to be there in time. So it'll be interesting to see whether the Reds came out of San Francisco on an up note. They picked up a big win against the Giants. They go home now. The easy out on this is I would expect a split. Steele's not pitching in this series. The Reds have their best, most of their best, such as it is in their rotation going. I think the Cubs are probably in for a tougher series than they think, and a lot tougher than when they last saw these guys at home.
So it's Wicks. I don't know who's going in Game 2 yet. Probably a bullpen day, and then they'll go with Javier Assad, who, by the way, I believe my number crunching is correct on this, but you could double check it. Since late June to this day, we're taping, Javier Assad has the lowest ERA of any starter in baseball. Javier Assad, yes. And
I'm double checking you.
Tyone will pitch in this series. Assad, Wicks, and then probably a bullpen day.
So you said from the end of June?
Yes.
Well, he's got a 1.68 ERA total since the end of June.
There you go.
And that's in 13 appearances, 5 of them starts. So he's been pitching just well overall.
Yeah, throwing the heck out of the ball. So we'll see how this whole thing shakes out. I think the Cubs end up taking 3 of 4 from the Redlegs.
I wouldn't be shocked. Honestly, Cap, this wild card race in the NL is so crazy and flawed and roller coaster. I wouldn't be shocked. Neither team's going to sweep this series. That would be the one thing that shocked me. But I wouldn't be shocked to see 3-1 either way.
No, me either, or 2-2. But I'm gonna say the Cubs are playing really good baseball. Their defense is so good. It's the best defensive team in the National League. And somebody I know, when I look in the mirror, I see that guy, told you that in April. Take that.
Hey, I will say this. In April and May, one of the Reds' weakest links was their fielding. But since they brought up, McLean's on the IL, but Ellie De La Cruz, man, I don't know if there's a guy with the range at short that he has and the arm at short. He does things. It almost looks.
That throw he made to the plate the other day to get the guy trying for the inside the park home run was insane.
And that was his second best of the year and his second hardest of the year to throw out a guy at the plate. And so they've gotten much, much better defensively. And if Harrison Bader's in center field when this series opens, and TJ Friedel, who's been playing a pretty damn good center field for him, is in one of the corners, all of a sudden their outfield just got upgraded the way their infield already had. So it could be a fun defensive series too, watching these two clubs.
Gordon, have a great rest of your day, man. We miss seeing you around the espresso breakfast tables.
I'll see you soon, Kap.
I look forward to it. It's my guy, Gordon Wittenmeyer. That is a wrap for this edition of the Cubs Recap Podcast here on our YouTube channel and available audio only anywhere you get your favorite podcast. For Gordon, for our great staff, I'm David Kaplan. Have a great rest of your night. Appreciate you greatly. Take that.